Well, I think the competitiveness report is really interesting because most people would think of Russia, it's a G8 member, as really one of the, quote, more competitive economies in the world. And yet the WCR has ranked Russia, I think, 67th in 2012, below Brazil, below China, below Mexico, below Turkey, and a lot of other countries that you would think are essentially behind. So Russia has some catch-up work that it has to do, and it includes not just on what we'll call the knowledge economy, because I'll get to that in a second, but also things like infrastructure. Things have to be upgraded dramatically. It's interesting that you said they're moving from an efficiency to kind of a knowledge-oriented economy, because right now, so when I grew up, I always thought of Russia and the former Soviet Union. Remember, I was born in 1964, so I'm thinking of a post-Sputnik world where we saw a space race. We really thought science and technology, Russia and the former Soviet Union really was quite advanced. And yet, when you look at the knowledge economy index that the World Bank has put together, Russia's actually about 55th. And it's actually been sliding over the last 15 years. The higher education system really needs to be overhauled dramatically. There are many people seeing a brain drain in Russia. Some of the best students, some of the best professors have kind of left the system. I think in the world ranking of universities, Russia only has one in the top 200. I think it's Moscow State. I know that Putin has made a pledge to kind of improve the setup, but what's interesting is that actually in 1996, Russian scientific publications, publishing, it was actually about 40% higher than it is today. So it's actually been sliding. And when you think about this, cultivating human capital is really going to be key going forward. Russia has been a resource-oriented economy, but I think that nobody, and particularly no one in Russia, would want to be thought of as a Venezuela with nuclear weapons. You know, Venezuela is an incredibly narrow economy. It's all oil-based. Of course, in Russia, it's more than just oil. There's gas, there's metals, but you don't want to have that, quote, commodity curse, where your economic policy is being driven by commodities and commodity prices. And that's actually one of the reasons why the economy has been incredibly volatile. We saw a contraction of almost 8% in 2009. Of course, there was a strong rebound, but you know, mature economies don't have those kind of huge fluctuations. And I think that Russia needs to internally build its economy that it's far more diversified. I always use the example that you don't want to be Venezuela, you want to be Canada. And oddly, Canada and Venezuela have very close to the same population, almost the same amount of oil export every day, and yet I believe Canadians are something like 6 or 7 times per capita richer than Venezuelans. So I think that that's a pretty good model. And so if you can focus on cultivating the human capital, I think that that'll help the economy. And then over time, too, a lot of the perceptions on what the place is about might improve. I mean, keep in mind, we're still talking about a country whose perception is still questionable. In 2012, the Transparency International had their corruption perception index, and I think Russia is very, very low. It's ranked, I think, 133rd in the world. So investors really are looking beyond just the mineral wealth of this country. They're really looking to the people and the management of the country. And I think that people have been a little bit skittish. And particularly the barometer that I would look at is foreign direct investment. Because foreign direct investment, the country's had a very, very difficult time attracting. If anything, actually, there's been money leaving. A lot of multinationals have actually been selling out their interests and repatriating out. I think that actually Russia has experienced about 5 years of negative FDI, maybe more, since the crisis. And you want to see that reverse, because that will be the telltale sign that things are getting better. Because if investors are willing to make long-term investments and leave their money in the country, foreigners, for a long period of time, that will underscore greater confidence in the total system.